there is a lack of advocacy and support for LGBTQ plus people within our industry. So as a gay architect, my main goal is to be a good architect. But sometimes when you have to put a lot of time into making sure you're not too gay or you're not too queer, or some of your mind can get used up as opposed to putting that all into your work.
Martin Scott is an Australian architect based in New York. He is an associate at FXCollaborative, working on a wide range of complex projects from conception to construction. Alongside his work in practice, Martin is a director of the Build Out Alliance, an advocate organisation for diversity and inclusivity within the design and the construction industries.
We did things like career building workshops for junior architects or students within the industry, other events like panel events, so bringing in queer architects within the industry to talk about their experiences.
What are those kind of skills that you really lean upon when you're leading?
It's part of our duty, I think, as architects as well, to have care for others in the working environment and definitely speaking up if something isn't right.
Have you found the industry improving in the sort of inclusivity aspect?
I think it's definitely better than it was 10, 15 years ago, but there's a lot more to do.
Martin, thanks so much for joining me.
No worries. Thanks for having me, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here.
Right, so a question that I ask all the guests on the podcast: why architecture? What is it about a career in architecture that gets you up in the morning, that keeps you coming back for more?
It's a good question. For me, I think there's multiple things. Um, Architecture is a creative industry, but it's also, I think, a good mix of a lot of different skill sets. So I'm a creative person. I think that kind of comes naturally.
Sure.
But there's also a lot of complexity to it too. So the technical side of things, paired with the creative side, is what really interests me. I love a challenge and I love solving puzzles, and every day I would say that I'm faced with definitely a challenge or two. So that keeps me excited. I know I'm always learning, but definitely having that creative side to it as well is a big part of it.
Do you think that variety really helps? Because I think that's something that I always kind of talk about with people. You know, a career in architecture is so different every day. You know, 1 minute you're drawing, 1 minute you're solving problems on site, next you're talking to communities, sort of thing. I think that's, for me, is the real value.
Exactly. Yeah. I think it never gets dull. There are some monotonous parts of projects, but that's always diversified by the stage of the project that you're working on, or the design of the project, or the client themselves and what they actually need. And then also keeping in mind what the end user is going to get. And that's quite an exciting part too, knowing that, I mean, you're designing this for someone ultimately, to make sure that you're providing whatever it is they need to make them enjoy the end product that they get.
Completely. So what was your route into, this career path? What's the sort of early upbringings? I know you're originally from Australia, and I wonder if we kind of talk about that sort of early upbringing and maybe how that kind of led to, a career in architecture.
Yeah. So I think my decision to go into architecture didn't happen until later on in high school. But in the background, I think back to how I grew up, and I grew up on a small farm in Tasmania, and was always, I think, exposed to a creative mindset. My dad was an engineer and my mum was a teacher. And so having mum's quite creative too in art and that sort of thing. So having those two paired, a technical mindset and a creative mindset, I think unconsciously prepared me for the architecture world. But having other vivid memories, like when I was really little, my dad would be tinkering in the shed and I'd be at the front and he'd bring out, like, there was a green bucket of nuts and bolts and a tin of nails, and he would just put them out the front with some tools and offcuts of wood and things, and just say, like, do what you want and be creative with it. So I just build little models, and just from a really young age, having that opportunity to be creative. And even as it's going out into the nature and being amongst the bush and with other animals, I think having that open-mindedness to be able to kind of go exploring and build cubbies and houses out of the vegetation and um, bits and pieces that are around you, I think was, um, yeah, that kind of put in my mind that I could be creative, um, and build things myself.
There's that lovely sort of connection, isn't there?
Yeah,
Like when you think like about us sort of physically building stuff, and I suppose it's that sort of thing that sometimes maybe you lose a little bit in architecture school when it all becomes a bit academic, the actual act of building. But like you say, like having an early experience of actually, putting things together, and like you say, like from found objects or out in the environment, sounds
yeah,
like an amazing kind of starter for it.
it was, yeah. And then actually using those, I think once I, grew up a little bit, being able to do things like DIY projects with the family, like all us kids would, I think, help whenever whenever mum and dad needed a hand. So we were always like, building things growing up. And then once I went into architecture school, yeah, I was actually able to, put some of those early, skills to use and actually formalize some of my training.
What was your early experience of architecture school like? Like, did you naturally sort of find yourself in, you know, being able to communicate your ideas well and, in crits and things like that? Because it's something
Yeah.
that, people I mean, architecture school is an incredibly kind of bit of a baptism of fire for people and a quite a difficult experience for some. Like, what's your kind of reflection on that time period?
Yeah, I think, being open to criticism, it is a
Mm,
hard thing, but it's something that I was always open to receiving. Um, Having to not take things personally, which is difficult because when you put your design out there, you're putting yourself. This project represents you, and so you're
mm,
putting, a lot of personal elements too out there, and to receive criticism on that can be difficult. But I've always had the mindset that I'm going to learn from whatever it is other people,
yeah.
um, take from my work, and I can use that however I best feel. So I think not taking things too personally. They're not doing it maliciously. They're doing it to give you honest, good feedback.
Mm, yeah.
And I think, that's valuable.
You obviously your early career was at Denton Court Commercial in, Melbourne, and then later in London. What drew you to London, and what was it about? I suppose, how do you compare those early experiences working for the same practice in 2 different locations and obviously coming from a sort of rural Australian, background, working now in London?
Yeah.
How do you sort of reflect on those kind of 2 different things?
Mm. The I think first moving to Melbourne was a big, uh, culture shock because it was going from small Tasmania to Melbourne, and I love that change and being in such an urban context. Um, but then once I was at, Identical Commercial in Melbourne and learning about their London office, and that kind of, I think, planted the seed that, oh, actually, while I'm working with Identical Commercial in Melbourne, maybe one day I could, work for them in London. And I remember setting up, like, I started at Identical Commercial as a student, and, one of the tasks as a student was to set up for conference calls, and it makes me feel old saying this. It was like there was a lot to set up for conference calls. It wasn't like clicking a button for Zoom,
Yeah.
but, there was stuff to set up, and I can remember setting up, for a call with some of the partners. It was for the, athletes village for the, Olympics 2012 in
Okay.
London,
Yeah, yeah.
and so
Yeah.
that project was going on when I was in Melbourne, and setting up that call and then seeing everyone in London pop up at Denton Cook Marshall over there, that planted that seed thinking, "Oh, actually, there is another office over there, and they're working on exciting projects." There was also the Stonehenge Visitors Centre, that was going on as well, and, um, it was quite exciting thinking about all the things that were going on in Europe. And while Australia and in Melbourne, it's a big city, but it's still geographically quite isolated. And so,
Mhm.
being in a context like Europe, I think making that transition. So once I did move over to London, was really exciting because there was a lot more exposure, literally kind of right next door to these other countries, and the other projects that we worked on, were, yeah, they were just had a lot greater exposure to other parts of the world. Even just living in another city like London that's so big and diverse in itself, was a huge draw card. So Yeah.
It's fascinating. I've got lots of friends and connections that are either Australian or from New Zealand, and they kind of use London as their
Right.
base to explore the rest of Europe. Like you say,
Right.
like we're so close to everything else, sort of thing. It's such
Yeah.
a opportunity for people.
Exactly.
In terms of the architecture and the way things were done, did you find any noticeable difference between the company in Australia and the company in London? Or was it, I mean, was it all set up in the same ways, or, did you find the actual act of being an architect quite different?
I think the size of that practice definitely had a lot to do with it. There was, like Melbourne was about 100 people when I was
Mm,
there. London was more about 25. So whilst it was still the same firm and a lot of the procedures were still the same, the way that projects were set up, that was all the same sort of protocol. Um, but being in a smaller office, the dynamics were quite different as well. So smaller teams, generally the projects were a little smaller. Um, so in that way, things did operate a little different. Um, it was yeah, it was like a miniature version of the Denton commercial in Melbourne. Like we still had, I can remember on a Friday night, you would still have drinks, but it was more intimate in the office, which was fun. And the area where the office was located was in Exmouth Market, and that was a
right.
beautiful area. But yeah, the way that the day to day running of projects, um, I think it had more to do with the size of the office as opposed to the geographical location. Definitely, I mean, in the UK, things are phrased a little different in terms of project stages and
Mm.
terminology. Those things are different, and licensing obviously as well. But more or less, it was just the scale of things that changed.
Obviously, in terms of the sort of licensing thing, we kind of come across this kind of interesting thing where you qualify as an architect, do your part three in London, and then quite soon afterwards, then move to New York. How did you find that sort of transition, and what kind of drew you there, having qualified in one country, then to explore another?
Yeah. And a lot of people might think, why did you get licensed in the UK and then move to another country soon after? But I see in getting licensed, uh, you learn a lot from that regardless.
Sure.
And
Mm.
I still have that license. I still renew it. I still maintain my CPD hours, all those things. So it's still a useful qualification to have. And whilst it doesn't specifically transfer, like I can't transfer my UK license to
Mm.
New York State specifically. There is reciprocal agreement with other states within the US, but unfortunately
Okay.
for New York, that doesn't. There isn't a reciprocal agreement, so I would need to do my exams over here if I were to become a New York State licensed architect. Um, but yeah, I think the process to get licensed in the UK was also a little complex because my bachelor and my masters were done in Australia, my part one and my part
True.
two. So I
Mm.
had to first, I did my part three, but then I had to go through the process of getting reciprocal agreement for my part one and my part
Mm.
two in the UK, and that all up took about a year. So it was a complex, bit of a long-winded process, but I have no regrets. I'm so glad that I have my UK license. It opens up doors for the future. But it also, there is reciprocal agreement between the UK and Australia. So if I did
Yeah.
want to get
Mhm.
licensed in Australia, then I can go that way too. So who knows, maybe eventually I'll be licensed in all three.
And what drew you from eventually, we've gone rural Tasmania, London, and now New York. What was it that, I mean, obviously I can imagine the glamour of New York and
Yeah.
stuff drawing you there, but what specifically?
Yeah, I think the it's just such a dense um
Mm.
concentration of so much diverse architecture. A lot of good, a lot of bad, a lot of mediocre, but it's all in such small area. And I found, like, I did a few trips to New York when I was living in London, and I found each trip I did was quite inspiring. I was able to see projects that I'd studied in university, and they're all so close to one another. Also, just the buzz that you get when you're in New
Yeah.
York to kind of live within that is really exciting, and that's part of, I think, that going back to that question about what gets me up in the morning, having a buzz, getting up and going to work is it's.
Mm.
I mean, it's a commute, but it's still like fun. You're still in Manhattan and going to work each day. Um, but I think what drew me, yeah, to New York was moving to a really big and even more diverse city than London. So going from London, which was already a great um, diverse city, to New York, which I felt like that was like that, but tenfold. So I yeah, was eager to kind of see another part of the world and live within it, and not just be a tourist walking through it.
Yeah, yeah. Sounds wonderful. Yeah, there was I mean, obviously, I've been to New York, and there was a period where we did definitely consider it,
Right.
moving over.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we were just kind of thinking about it, and then my dad passed away, so we had to
I'm
stay
sorry.
home. But
Oh, right.
yeah, that was a missed opportunity, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think that's yeah, I almost felt like if I didn't do it when I chose to do it, and soon after my licensing, then I would never have done it. I could have quite easily and happily stayed in London. It was quite comfortable to live there, but um, yeah, if I didn't do it, I may not have never done it. So
I think that is that wonderful thing of when you're a bit younger, like having those, embracing the opportunities that come and just kind of fully, whenever I talk to architecture students and stuff, like the idea of, take a gap year doing this or go to a different university abroad sort of thing. Like there's so many, then is the time to really explore those things and find out, what suits you best sort of thing and what doesn't. So
100%.
it sounds
Yeah.
like you've really done that, which is
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Obviously, your role within FX Collaborative, you're an associate. What would you say are those kind of important day to day skills that you now have? Talking earlier, it was kind of a balance between the technical side and the creative side. Do you find that sort of all rounder type aspect has stayed with you, or do you think that the specialism kind of angle suits people better?
Yeah. I I think it's very subjective. I feel like for me,
Mm.
I personally feel like having a broader range, a broader skill set is important to me, and that's what I feel has helped me take on projects and will help me in the future take on larger projects and lead projects when I have a more diverse spread skill set. I think if I were to specialize in something, um, then it may limit my opportunities as to what sort of projects I could work on in the future, or taking on leading projects. It might limit me. I think I've worked on, and I also enjoy it. I think being able to, I get excited about working on a facade detail and can get quite passionate about that. But then I also really enjoy crafting a really finely detailed millwork detail too. And I think also as architects, we need to know how to do all of it. I think if we were to design a full project, or needed to have knowledge to help other people within our team, then to at least have that part of knowledge in all facets of the building is important.
I think that's that sort of fascinating thing about architecture generally, isn't it? Like it's such a, the designing of a building is a massive thing, and like you say, you only really kind of learn the process once you kind of experienced all stages of it. Again, I
So,
talk to lots of students about trying to get that sort of rounded experience to kind of then find where you kind of sit well. I think, similar to you, like I like to kind of think of myself as an all rounder. Whether other people would say
right.
the same thing, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you say like you only really kind of understand things once you've built something, or once you've understood how something goes together, then that will teach you the next time when you're designing something, all those kind of things to watch out for. And it's only with that sort of, the full loop of something that helps you kind of, yeah, work it
Yeah.
all out.
Absolutely, and I think that can also spread to other types of the architectural world too, whether it be the different stages of a project, right, from concept, inception through to completion and handover, or a scale of a project, a smaller scale project, whether it be residential or mixed use or commercial or educational. There's so many, yeah, different areas where we can diversify our experiences, and if I'm able to diversify mine as much as possible in on all the facets, then that's valuable for me, the
Mm.
most valuable opportunity. Yeah.
Outside of a sort of design thinking background, what are the skill sets that have kind of helped you in your management role in terms of, managing projects and stuff? And obviously, again, we talk so much about, managing our time, managing our relationships with people,
Mm.
understanding how things work. Like, what are those things that you kind of, how you kind of lead? What are those kind of skills that you really lean upon when you're leading?
I think understanding your team's skill sets,
Mm.
where each of the members can best be plugged into, and utilize their skills, but also understanding what they want to learn and what they want to focus on too. But yeah, utilizing their skills most often leads to them doing their better work and them enjoying what they're doing, which equals usually a happy team. Um, and I think also being able to have an understanding of uh, schedule and time constraints as well is important to making sure that you meet your deadlines, that also produce a quality drawing set or whatever that deadline is. Um, but yeah, understanding also what the end goal is and what the client's needs are. So being able to build a good relationship with their client right from the beginning and earn that trust that they really need. And
Mm.
then if it does get to construction, being able to work well with a contractor. There's always a lot of challenges, I think, when it comes to construction and that final stage of getting the project built. But and can be quite tense a lot of the time. But managing and creating a good environment with the contractor is, I think, really important because you all need to be, um, I don't know, getting on with one another when you're
Yeah,
at
yeah,
that final
completely.
stage. Yeah.
Yeah. How have you found it different again from London? Yeah, the actual act of being an architect in New York and in America. Like, what are those sort of differences, and yeah, even to down to the way the sort of contractual relationships work and how
Sure.
contractors work or how consultants treat each other.
Yeah. There's some differences I've noticed within the just the way that architects um, formed within firms, and so you often have. I didn't notice this in the UK, or I've not seen it in Australia. Are those that you have in New York or in America? You have architects who are design architects or technical architects, and there's a quite a clear difference.
Right.
In my experience in other countries, if you're an architect, you're an architect and you design, but you also need to have a solid
Mm.
technical skill set as well. Um, so that learning that and working with that is a little different. I think that we should all have the opportunity to design, to
Mm.
lead the design on a project. I think as architects, that's going back to again, what gets me up in the morning. It's that creative element, and when that's not utilized, I think it can make the job a little bit more difficult when you're not utilizing your design skills. I mean, for some architects, maybe that isn't their interest, and they're happy just doing the technical or the other parts. But I think there still needs to be, or there should be, areas that allow architects to have design exposure, technical exposure, all of those things all at once. That's a big difference I've noticed.
Yeah.
Um, Contract types, I think, yeah, that every city or country has its own contract types, and without going into too much of the details, I think, yeah, it's just a matter of learning the different contracts when you're in that country. Um, but I haven't felt it be a deal breaker or something difficult to adapt to. It's just it's like the code in a way. There's different codes for each country that I've lived in, and it's a matter of just learning it.
Yeah. I suppose that's the thing, is like for people listening, that imagine going between Australia, London, New York, and you've lived that, you've done that. It feels like you've managed to transition quite easily. I mean, sorry, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but it
Yeah,
feels
no,
like it's, like you've managed to do that quite easily and taken the challenge upon yourself, sort of thing. It
yeah,
doesn't feel like it's.
it's definitely something to be conscious of before doing it, knowing that there are things that you need to put more time into, time that maybe those that you're working for may not recognize. Um,
Mm.
that you have to relearn a code or get relicensed, or a lot of these things that if someone were to just stay in that one city or country doesn't necessarily have to do, and so can spend more time um, putting that into their day to day work. So there is a lot of, I feel, with it, to try and not get held back. You've got to put in the extra time to learn the code, or to relearn these other things that, or even just a different measurement system. That's still
Yeah,
going from
sure.
metric to
That's probably
imperial
the
is
biggest change, isn't it?
yeah,
Christ.
and it is it's just something you have to do. And I I remember thinking it before moving to the US that, oh yeah, they've got imperial, and I'd done an exchange in university to the US before, so I had a little bit of an exposure. But when you literally go from 1 week working in the UK in metric, and from Australia, that just comes naturally, to having to do everything. Scales are really difficult to switch, and I think you can't switch. There's no equivalent of one scale to the other. You just have to
Yeah.
learn what scales, what sheet sizes, all those sorts of things are completely different. So there have been a few embarrassing instances where I've put like a stupid scale on a sheet or done a really odd sheet size because I thought it was the right
Sure.
one. But there's a
Do
process
you
that
do
you
you
go
think in
through.
feet and inches now, though? That's the
Um,
question.
yeah, yeah, I do. Yeah. When I'm on the
Okay.
projects here, it's kind of like a language, actually. It's like you
Mm.
just
Yeah, yeah.
click into it. But then, like, I was recently back in Tasmania and was helping my mum do some work on her house, and um, everything. I mean, I had to consciously think, oh no, this needs to be in metric. But that switched immediately back to metric. So it's now there. I think they both come naturally. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Like you say, like a language. That's really
it
fascinating.
is. Yeah, yeah,
Now, I want to talk about your sort of your sort of passion points, and we've mentioned diversity a few times in what you've been talking about. You're an active voice in terms of diversity and inclusion within the design, construction industry, real estate industries, and you're heavily involved in something called the Build Out Alliance. I wonder if you can tell us a bit more about that and
sure.
what you guys do.
Sure. Yep. So Build Out Alliance, it's a non-profit organization, a 501(c)(3), since 2018. And it's, yeah, so our mission is to provide advocacy and support for LGBTQ plus people within the building design and construction industry. Um, so my involvement first started off, I had just joined FXCollaborative, and had heard of this organization through one of my colleagues. Um, and so got involved through the professional programming committee. There's several committees that the organization has, and I was the co-chair for that committee for a few years, and that focused on doing educational and informative events for the community. Um, so that was we did things like career building workshops for junior architects or students within the industry, and that's something that we've actually continued to do every year since. We actually just did that again last weekend. But other events like panel events, so bringing in queer architects within the industry to talk about their experiences, because often there is a lack, or there has been a lack, of advocacy and support for LGBTQ plus people within our industry. So providing that support that we do need, because the industry still does have, and has in the past, hasn't had a great track record in um, treating LGBTQ plus people, and it's something that goes across, I think, all industries. And there needs to be a support network out there. So hearing other people's stories can often sometimes really help, providing a network of other people out there who are able to help if you need it, whether it's to talk about a bad experience that you've had, or if you're even just having difficulty at your own firm, or you need more experiences in a certain area, or if you need a mentor. We've also created mentorship programs for junior architects or graduates as well. So it's something that I wish I had more when I had, well, before I had started in the industry, because I didn't come out until 30. I was 30, and so was well and truly through my education. And there's difficulties when you are closeted, um, and whilst it is a personal thing, I think it still does impact to a degree how you can perform. I think as a gay architect, I my main goal is to be a good architect. That's who I am. I'm an architect. But sometimes when you have to put a lot of time into um, making sure you're not, I don't know, making people feel uncomfortable, or you're not too gay, or you're not too queer, or you're saying things correctly, that some of your mind or your time can get used up and your energy
Sure.
into that as opposed to putting that
Yeah.
all into your work. Um, so I think, yeah, it's a great organization and it's continuing to grow. So we did start off in New York, but now we've started up in several other locations. So we've got LA, San Francisco, Chicago, and DC, as well as New York. So it's a growing organization and provides a greater network across the country. But also, I think within each city, it's got a really good network within those cities to the community level, which is also just important as the larger scale too.
I think, like you say, it's a wonderful thing being able to think about your past self and provide
Mm.
the support that you would have enjoyed or wanted at that age. And yeah, I wholeheartedly kind of agree. I do a lot of sort of
Mm.
mentoring stuff on the side of all of this, and
Right.
I think again, you're always kind of talking to your past self, aren't you? You're always trying to improve the industry as a whole and try and get rid of the aspects which you don't enjoy, and
Absolutely.
alongside all the negative aspects of like
Yeah.
overtime and
Yeah.
unfair working experiences and things like
Exactly.
that. And
Yeah.
I wonder whether through your career, have you found the industry improving in the sort of inclusivity aspect? And I suppose in terms of have you seen different experiences across the three, countries that you've worked? I mean, obviously, New York famously has a huge amount of diversity and
Right.
has been talking about inclusivity for a long time, sort of thing. And I wonder, what those different experiences are like in those different countries.
Yeah. And I would say it's um, interesting too, because I think as I've moved from one country to the next, the world has also fortunately moved forward.
The different period. Yeah, yeah, I get
Yeah, yeah. So I think when I was in Australia, and I probably experienced more homophobia in Australia and then into London and then on to New York, and each place that I've moved to has improved. But I think each of those countries has also improved throughout the same timeline as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
It's just I haven't been in those countries at that time. But it is promising, I think, to see that our industry is diversifying more. That's still got such a long way to go. There's a lot more to do, but I think it's definitely better than it was 10, 15 years ago. Um, on all levels, I think there's a better awareness.
In terms of like, obviously, we're in a sort of creative industry, and a lot of people kind of expressing themselves, so may naturally fall to more elements of inclusivity, sort of thing. Do you find interacting with other professions in your role as an architect, and I'm not trying to specifically say contractors and things like that, but one would typically think that maybe a contracting firm may be less progressive in those areas.
Right.
Would you consider that fair?
Yeah, I think so. It comes with, I think, yeah, the way that those different industries have evolved, that it has been um, less diverse and less inclusive
Mm.
in the past. I think they are also changing, and there's great groups out there that are helping diversify those fields. But an important part, I think, of being part of Build Out Alliance, but also just being a queer architect, is that when I am in those environments, whether it be on site with a contractor, or if I do experience or see that sort of behavior happening, is to speak up about it and
Yeah.
actually say, and not be argumentative about it, but just kind of give your perspective. If it's something that's not right to say, just perhaps say that. There's nothing more that really needs to be said, but planting that seed in someone's head that actually what you just said was perhaps offensive to that
Yeah.
subcontractor. It's part of our duty, I think, as architects as well, to have care for others in the working environment, and and definitely speaking up if something isn't right. Otherwise, it's the problem's just going to keep happening.
I suppose, and like you say, it's that kind of thing of, as a person that's been through it and is a bit older, sort of thing, you have that sort of ability, almost the agency, almost to
Mm.
have the chance to say that maybe a younger person in that position may not feel the same level of comfort to do.
That's right. Yeah.
I love the idea of advocacy alongside, it's not just about the sort of inclusivity sort of thing, it's advocacy. In what ways do you find yourself as a group advocating, for architects and people from the background?
Um, I think just being who I am and being present and not um, being, I guess, not being closeted, but being open about who I am and not shoving it in people's faces, but yeah, not hiding it and kind of speaking up about its importance. That yeah, I think being a spokesperson for other people helps, and the more of us who can advocate for ourselves, but as well as for the community as a whole, makes it easier for everyone. Um, and that includes every part of the LGBTQ plus community, especially at the moment with the current climate. There's
Mm.
certain parts of our community, like trans or non-binary people, who are being targeted more. So speaking up for them and being their voice too is incredibly important. And it's not always easy to, I would say, speak up because sometimes the environment that you can be in is quite difficult. You could be in a room full of very conservative people or straight
Mm,
people, or
sure.
you don't know their mindsets. And but it, yeah, like I said before, if I don't do it, then maybe that no one else does it. So I think the advocacy is a very big part of it. And again, through Build Out Alliance, how we do put events out there, um, where providing opportunities for people to go to these events, to learn from one another, to meet other people who might have gone through similar issues, so that they can build their confidence to speak up
Mm.
when it matters as well.
Obviously, Build Out Alliance is kind of a an organization that's kind of led by you and a group of other people's kind of impetus. Have you found much sort of change in terms of your sort of professional bodies within the US, for example, so like the AIA and people like that? Is there any sort of dialogue when it comes to those elements of diversity and inclusion that you've kind of found?
Yeah, so there, it seems like we were quite early in starting being a group like this. There weren't previously other that I knew of, um, other groups of a similar scale. Um, but to see now that the AIA does have their own LGBTQ plus um, group as well,
Mm.
it's good to see that there are other groups out there starting. I think Build Out Alliance is still quite unique in that we provide a very large cover for all parts of the industry, whether it be architecture, engineering, construction, interior design, lighting design, all of those things. They kind of come under our umbrella. There are other groups out there that are a bit more focused on whether it be sustainability, but for the queer community,
Mm.
then sustainability, um, or landscape architecture. So there are other groups out there, but it is good to see that um, we are kind of moving along at the same pace and working together to help one another spread
Yeah,
out in
sure.
missions. I think we have an underlying mission um, that really drives what we do. Um, but it's good to see that there's collaboration between our groups, and I think that's really important.
Would you I mean, I've spoken to a lot of architects on the podcast, and a lot of architects kind of get involved in sort of extracurricular groups, and whether they're about design or, in London, being involved in the RIBA sort of thing. Obviously, your intention is around, your sort of diversity ideas. Would you I mean, there must be so many other benefits just by finding a group of people within the industry, and like you say, like having different people from different areas of the industry, not just architects,
Mm.
having those conversations that are, outside of the diversity conversation, just about design, about the process, about architecture. I
Yeah.
mean, you must have found a huge amount of value in just having that network and
Oh yeah.
being involved in those things.
Yep. Definitely. It's interesting. It makes you realize sometimes how much you can be using your energy on when you're in a very straight environment, how much energy you subconsciously put towards just kind of making sure you're you're, I don't know, code switching to a degree. But when you're in an environment where everyone is queer, you can focus wholeheartedly on that discussion about whatever
Yeah.
it is, and actually feel a little bit more free and open to be 100% who you are and have really constructive conversations about design with zero distractions about anything else that's going on. Um, it's not a conscious thing too, but when you're in that environment, it happens naturally, and it is really
Yeah.
beautiful when you can do that.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a wonderful initiative, and I mean, yeah, it's great that you're kind of spreading amongst throughout different states, like you say. Is
Yeah.
that the plan, sort of moving forward, to grow as much as you can and
Yeah,
spread the
I
word
mean,
sort of thing?
partially, I think it's not our focus to just grow. And
Yeah,
I've been on the board now for 2 years, and now just started in my second term. We've got a lot of other focuses, and yes, expanding has been one, to provide a greater outreach and greater advocacy and support for our community throughout the country, and to areas where they may not necessarily have that support that they need. But in saying that, our mission is our core, um, and that's at the community level as well. So making sure that, yes, as we grow, we're providing, um, we're keeping our mission, but we also need to be making sure that we're keeping it at a community level too. So that's, if you look at the macro level, just in New York, there's communities here within New York where there isn't advocacy and support, or they need more of it. And so making sure that parts of New York, communities within New York are getting support and advocacy as well. And so that we're providing events, or programs or initiatives within this city and not losing track of that.
sure. In terms of, I mean, obviously you've been through architecture school, and like we kind of hinted at the beginning, sometimes it can be a very difficult place to kind of exist, and with
Mm,
great deadlines and all of
mm.
that. Do you think there should be more conversations around, architecture school, around inclusivity and things like that? And I suppose, thinking back to your experience of architecture school, what sort of things would you like to see put in place that maybe improves things for the future?
Yeah. And yeah, I think there could be more. I don't, again, I can't speak to how certain classes are being done now, but I know that when I studied, there wasn't much focus at all on inclusive design, and inclusive is a broad topic, and it
Yeah,
could be
sure.
inclusive in terms of designing for accessibility, or designing for different community groups, or that there's so many types of inclusivity that we need to be designing for. If you're designing a project in the middle of a neighborhood, you should be designing for that community that surrounds. You need to be inclusive of that existing
Sure.
community. Um, so yeah, I think it's something that we should always be pushing more. And I think there's if you look in the States, there's cities were designed around segregation, redlining, literally divided cities. And so especially in places where it's been such a um, it's still inbuilt into the
Um,
system, these patterns are still there. There's a lot of work that needs to be done to undo that damage that was done when redlining was first put in place. So, I mean, that's just one facet of inclusivity, and I think it's important to have that from the beginning, so that as an architect, you're always aware and you're always thinking of that. It's not an afterthought. Um,
mm.
yeah,
I think that's, like you say, that's the thing. It's about having those sort of early dialogues and just opening. I mean, hopefully, most of us architects come into the profession to with the idea to make things better, and have those open conversations, not dictate ideas onto people. But
right.
obviously, like you
Being
say, you don't want.
being open
Sometimes things
and
go awry along the way.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, being aware of it is a big
Mm.
part, so that it's not, like I say, like an afterthought or something that's done as a token gesture, because that's where it's really meaningless.
How would you? I mean, what would you want people to take away from your career? I mean, having spoken with you for an hour,
Mm,
you know, I'm I'm seeing this kind of incredible journey from, like we started with, from rural Australia to
mm,
New York, and like you say, the sort of progression, and you kind of finding yourself in or communicating that to the outside world in later life, sort of thing, and finding yourself in New York, and it feels like you being in the right place now, sort of thing. Like how would you kind of reflect on your journey and what people might be able to take from it?
I feel like I'm only partway through. I am only partway through
Yeah, yeah,
my
of course,
journey.
of
So
course.
the way
Not to put a
it's quite
stopper on it just yet.
I'm quite excited to see what is to come as well. But I think from where I've gotten to so far, it's um, I'm glad that I've taken opportunities to move to New York, to move to the mainland when I left Tasmania to take those opportunities and whether it be a school exchange or actually moving country to live in another country, rather than it just being a thought of, oh,
Mm.
I could do that. But no, it's too difficult. But I think it's valuable to, if there is an idea that you have or something that you want to do, there's reason behind that, and to kind of work out in your own mind what that reason is and why you want to do that, what's pushing you to do that. And then if it's something that you really want to do, then do it. And it's yes, it is difficult to move countries, and there's a lot of complexities involved with that, whether it be visas or immigration. But there's so many people out there who can help you. So finding who those people are and what is the route to make that happen. I think one thing that was really helpful for me earlier on, I did like a year by year plan on kind of quite scary when you map everything out in a year of where you might want to be. It makes your career look really short because you start working out, oh yeah, well I've had a year here to move to, to get licensed. Like it starts to take up chunks of time, but then also what type of work you might want to do and how you work that in with your plan as well. How are you going to get to a specific firm that you might want to work for? Um, but having that map, that 20-year plan is really useful, and that always evolves, but it might have different paths that deviate off it. But I think, yeah, that really helped me get to where I am, but not being afraid to take a leap of faith and
Mm.
move to another country. If it doesn't work out, then at least you gave it a go.
I think that's you've hit on my next question, which is one that I normally ask everyone, which is about has your career turned out how you imagined and how much of it
Mm,
being intentional and how much of it's being kind of adaptation. And I
right.
think you're probably one of the first people that I've spoken to that actually has thought about the plan.
Yeah,
I
right.
think that's a quite a strong idea.
Yeah, it's very, very useful, and it's something that I can continue to go back to, and it's just like
Mm.
an Excel doc on Google Sheets, and so it's something that I'm, like, always reminding myself of, like, "Oh, yeah, I was needing to this, I need to, like, maybe get back on track." But I think yeah, I mean, to where I am now in my career, I didn't have a specific plan, like, I'm gonna be in New York working for this firm. It was more, I think, what did I want my experiences to be? I never would have thought that I would have become more of an advocate for the queer community within the architecture, engineering, construction industry. But that's something I'm so pleased that I've
Well,
fallen into in a way, and it honestly is, I think, a core part of who I am as an architect is providing support and advocacy for people who need it. I think we can all everyone can do with a bit more of that. Um, but yeah, no, I am very pleased with where I am, and I think I've learned a huge amount from each of the steps that I've taken um, for the different companies that I've worked for and the different countries that I've worked in. Um, yeah, I don't have any regrets with the path that I've taken.
I think it's great that you take that time to sort of reflect on it, and it's something maybe some of us need to be a bit more kind of self-aware and have those
Mm,
check-ins, with ourselves, sort of thing.
yeah.
How we spoke about you not being done just yet, and there's so much of
Yeah,
your career left. What
yeah,
do you what is that plan moving forward? Just to
sure.
enjoy the ride and do more of the same, or have you got another ambition?
Yeah, I don't have timelines on I have to do certain things by this time, but I'm enjoying where I am now and continuing to work on complex projects. I'm looking forward to work on more projects and of greater complexity, maybe of larger scale, and yeah, continue to diversify my experiences, like we're talking about before. Yeah, continuing to spread my skills and learn more, I think. And yeah, with Build Out Alliance, continuing to spread that mission, and help that group grow as well.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I think you're doing some amazing stuff, and long may it continue.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, Chris.